So friends, following the general discussion on Waiting for Godot and the writer Samuel Beckett, now we come to the text itself, the kind of life that it presents, the problems that it shares with the audience, and whether there is a solution to the problems or whether the problems will remain. All that is considered in the text itself, and Professor Payal Nagpal would be just telling us about what the issues are and how they could be tackled, if at all. So over to you, Professor Payal Nagpal.
Thank you, Professor Prakash. So we were talking about the structure of the play, and one of the things, for instance, Javed Malik has actually called it in his recent work a kind of contrapuntal dramaturgy, where the characters are both this and that, in the sense that if you look at the pairs, we look at Vladimir and Estragon, and we look at Podzo and Lucky, they become like agential units. Within the units, the two people complement each other, and yet at the same time there is a kind of tension that continues, and this is what it also kind of has a bearing on the larger dialectic, really speaking, that is brought out in the play. So Raymond Williams of course looks at it in terms of loss of faith is the structure of feeling, he says, in this particular play, and Rubicon has located symmetry and repetition in the play. So in terms of a kind of arrangement of emphasis, so the opposite poles, for instance, there is the farcical and there is the tragic, there is routinized speech, and there is a kind of ponderous silence, as Malik calls it, and change and permanence. So these are some of the aspects, and if we look at the names themselves, from the French to the Russian to the Italian and the English, the idea is that they do not belong. We discussed the whole issue of the tramps. They do not belong to any one particular country or space. This is about the general human condition. So this is, a play that is marked by brevity, ideas packed into crisp phrases, and each and every sentence makes the reader think, because if you look at the very first line, the play begins with the line, "Nothing to be done." So if there is nothing to be done, what is it that one is going to do? And this is where the act of waiting, so which is the ultimate stasis, that no action is being performed, so the act of waiting itself is the only action that is going to take place. The very first page of this particular play it tells us about Estragon being beaten up. So on the one hand there is stasis, and on the other there is only a kind of one can call it oppression, one can call it a deterioration. This is what is happening in terms of the human condition. So the impossibility of understanding how it hurts, in a sense, when Estragon and Vladimir are talking to each other. How do they understand each other's experience? They can only understand the experience in terms of their own respective individual experiences. Which brings us to the question of who is Godot, and Alan Schneider, who directed the American production, asked Beckett, and Beckett answered by saying, "If I knew, I would have said so in the play." The fact that it is not mentioned, the fact that Godot is, an idea of what could come, an idea of an eventuality, the process itself becomes extremely important. So, of course, there is a lot of discussion about the differences, in a sense, between Vladimir and Estragon and Podzo and Lucky. But what is more important here is to understand that there are no certainties, there are no certitudes in life. Even the names, there are, when it comes to the names of Vladimir and Estragon, they are referred to by the young boy through totally different names. So there is nothing that is for certain. And this certainty, this lack of certainty, is the only thing that is for sure, and is brought out in a kind of starkness and barrenness on stage. If we understand time, then time, in a sense, is something that is probably the most difficult idea to grapple with, because Act 1 ends on the note that they are going to move, but they don't move. The only change we notice in Act 2, from Act 1 to Act 2, in terms of the stage setting, is the leaves that are present on the tree. So these are some of the ideas that indicate the sense of chaos in a world that is beset by, capitalism, forms of neocolonialism and so on. Beckett's answer to all this is really speaking, a kind of, raising questions to the self, not for dissociation, but for expression. So use of non sequiturs and, the absurd is what is out of harmony, really speaking. And, here again, Estlin says that it is the act of waiting that remains the ultimate human condition. So, the famous actor Ian McKellen, who played Estragon, also corroborates this, and he said Beckett was the first person to say that an awful lot of life is about waiting. So it is this, if we look at these shots from various productions, we see the kind of darkness that is expressed. We see a kind of loneliness, and when we talk about the sense of this kind of brevity that he practices, he raises the questions of the human condition through it, through this new style that comes up in the late 1940s and continues right through the 1950s, which is what leads to the coinage of the term theatre of the absurd. To give a very, very small example, the law in life is associated with the law of probability. For instance, in terms of the biblical version, the idea is that one of the thieves has been saved, and two of the writers don't make a mention of the thieves, and one of them says that both had abused the Savior, but only one version says that one of the thieves was saved. Looking at the biblical paradigm, this probability of the redemption of humankind is then, it is reduced, it becomes, the chances are minuscule, and it is, but we still hang on to these chances. And so is Godot, our minuscule chance of redemption, is a question that is raised. So Vladimir says that all four were there, but only one speaks of the thief being saved, and Vladimir is upset about the fact that everybody believes him. It's the only version they know. So why is it? Doesn't answer it. Why is it that this is the only version that people believe in? Another central aspect of Waiting for Godot is lucky speech. Very, very important. It focuses on some very important aspects. For instance, the arbitrariness of the idea of, if there is this ultimate idea of, God that's going to redeem mankind. In spite of all progress, how man seems to just, waste and pine. There is a complete questioning of logic, of rationality, and this is done through language. How? Through language? Because what one character speaks is not understood by the other. The answer given is probably to a question that has not been asked. So the arbitrariness of existence, the arbitrariness of certitudes, the arbitrariness of what we consider to be development, these ideas are challenged by lucky speech. So, it's almost like a 3-page, speech, and it goes on and it parodies a lot of these ideas. And this is something very, very important. And Stein says that, in voice and gesture, it's almost as if, he's talking about the hellfire. And, Stein draws attention to different aspects. And lastly, it seems as if he's a poet foreboding doom. And this questioning of the human existence, this process of thinking through language which itself is broken, is something that is a very, very important aspect of absurd theatre. And here I'd request Professor Prakash to please talk a little bit about lucky speech, which is in a sense so very central to the dynamic of the play, because the broken language that Lucky uses becomes, I think, a kind of hinge point in this play, around which it seems everybody else's language and kind of moves around in a circle.
Well, one or two things can be raised, and you will have to resolve them. The first thing is the naming of the character as Lucky. What does he do in the play? What his job is? He is mostly quiet. You tell us about this. He is mostly quiet, and when he speaks, he bursts forth into a kind of prose nobody understands. But then understanding also is there in the sense that he is mimicking the newspaper, he is mimicking the commentator, he is mimicking a poet, he is mimicking everybody else without meaning anything, as you rightly point out. So the first thing is that the person is lucky. How is he lucky? Where is his good luck? I think when I read the play, I found him pulling, the wagon of somebody, and that wagon also was of a very strange kind. So he was a slave, and a slave is called lucky. And in the 20th century, if good luck is that that you are a slave, then I think it shrouds everything in kind of irony. The second thing, as you point out, is the absurdity of the language that is there in his case, exemplified so well. There is not a single full sentence in his speech. There are only phrases. Yes. And as I remember from my time of teaching it, the speech starts with considering. And considering means that first you will talk about half sentence, and then you will say, okay, therefore. But then therefore never occurs. So that kind of failure of language. One thing is, I would like your response to this. One thing is that the person who is the most unlucky in the world is called lucky. And the second thing is that he has so much to say, but he cannot say anything that would make sense to us. So how would you respond?
So I think, as you very rightly pointed out, that if we look at Pozzo and Lucky, actually, they are of course in a completely hierarchical relationship and so on. And Lucky is, he's pulling the rope, and he's actually handing the whip himself to Pozzo, almost indicating how people themselves have internalized, their own methods and means of oppression. And, how is it that a person like this can be lucky? But I think Beckett is also saying that this is what it means, that to be lucky in this world means to be handing over your, the means that oppress you, you accept them and you're handing them over, and you still call lucky. And of course, language there's a complete breakdown at the level of language. Language is no longer able to convey any meaning. And for somebody in Lucky's position, there is no way in which language belongs to him in any way. So it is this breakdown, I think, which is why I felt that this was really like the hinge point around which everybody else is talking in complete sentences at least. But with Lucky, even that is not available. There is no way in which language is a consolidated unit that can convey meaning anymore. So certainly, and how he does everything that he's told. Pozzo is, he remains quiet throughout. Even when somebody tries to help him, he retaliates. He kicks Estragon. So he doesn't, really speaking, know how to, step outside of it. Something that we also see in another play titled Endgame by Beckett again, where this kind of a relationship exists between the characters Ham and Clove. And the play ends with Clove standing at the door. We don't know whether he will actually leave Ham who cannot move. So Clove is the one who's kind of doing everything for Ham. We don't know if Clove is actually going to finally leave him. He says he will, but then again, like Vladimir and Estragon, who say they will move, they don't move, and neither do we know whether Clove actually moves out or not.
How do we resolve this question? What is Lucky doing in the play? What is his relevance?
So I think if we have to, really speaking, understand the absurdity of the human existence, I think we just pick up Lucky's speech in the play, and I think we just know it all. So it begins with considering, and the words that are interspersed, the phrases qua, qua, qua throughout, telling us that it means nothing really.
It's a noise.
So if Vladimir and Estragon are tramps, then probably in the play it appears that they have more certitudes to hang on to than somebody like Lucky. The only certitude he has to hang on to is his oppression and his hierarchical relationship with Pozzo. So I think this power dynamic is very well brought out in the relationship between Pozzo and Lucky.
So there is a kind of situation where characters have no job, but then there is another character who has a job, and he doesn't have language.
He doesn't have language.
And how do you compare the two predicaments? The predicament of Vladimir and Estragon on one side and of Lucky on the other. He has a job.
He has a job, but a job that only kind of traps him further.
Yes.
And a job that does not liberate him. So if we actually look at what Clove says in Endgame, he says that, you must learn to suffer. This is Clove speaking about himself. You must learn to suffer better than that if you want them to weary of punishing you. Almost as if there's no way out of it, and you just have to wait for them, the oppressors in a sense, to weary of punishing you. One day I say to myself, he says, Clove, you must be better than that if you want them to let you go. So, but where is the will for Clove to leave on his own? I think that is a question that applies pretty much to Lucky also, because Pozzo wants to sell him off, but there is nothing that Lucky can do, and he wants to continue to hang on to the rope that in a sense kind of holds him there.
So there are three characters so far that you talked about. One is Vladimir, the second is Estragon, the third is Lucky, and you also mentioned Pozzo. So say something about him.
So Pozzo, of course, he takes his position for granted, and Lucky is there as a slave, and he kind of asks him continuously to run various errands for him, and Lucky has internalized this so well that just at one command, at just one indication, he's going to get up and do the same. And by the time we come to Act 2, so there are Pozzo and Lucky again, and Pozzo is blind and Lucky is dumb. But his blindness is where, he comes up with those wonderful lines that, are you going, for how long are you going to torment with me with your cursed time? So his understanding or lack of it of time is very important here in terms of the movement from Act 1 to Act 2. So if we actually look at some of the slides from the production, they bring out this idea very well with the tree at the back, and one can just visualize that the change is there. The tree has got leaves, but if we look at the human condition, there is only deterioration, with Pozzo going blind and Lucky going dumb. And here again, this kind of starkness, and here is Nasiruddin Shah playing Pozzo in a production of Waiting for Godot. So I think his statement that have you not done tormenting me with your cursed time, it's abominable. One day, is that not enough for you? One day he went dumb, one day I went blind, one day we'll go deaf, one day we were born, one day we shall die, the same day, the same second. Is that not enough for you? They give birth astride of a grave. The light gleams an instant, then it's night once more. So I think this what Pozzo says, I think in Act 2, indicating a deterioration, yet maintaining a kind of hierarchical relationship with Lucky, is something that is very central to the play. And I think these lines by Pozzo really bring out the absurdity of the human condition. So what would you say about Pozzo?
No, you see, I'm just looking at the play from the point of view of the audience, and let's say if I'm watching this play, then already 4 characters have been introduced. Lucky, Pozzo, Vladimir and Estragon. And there is a fifth one,
character.
and the fifth one is the final one. And there are indications of the fifth one, in the biblical story that you referred to in the beginning. So that is Godot, who will not come, who actually is binding all these characters into a kind of thread, and they are waiting for him, but this person will not come. So say something about Godot.
So as I said that, Beckett himself said that if he knew what Godot was all about, then he would talk about it. So I think Godot can mean different things in different time periods, in different societies, in different cultures. Godot is an idea in that sense. And the finality of that idea is not as important as the process that one lives through. Because if the certitudes are that one is born and that one dies one day, so within that, this whole process is a process of waiting. And the finale of the arrival of Godot is not something that is realized in concrete form, and it is left at the level of an idea to make the process itself more pronounced, and that process is a reflection of the absurdity of human life.
Suppose I say that Godot not coming is more important than Godot coming.
Yes.
Because if Godot comes, then the wait will come to an end. And why should we not have wait? So waiting is the motto of the play, and Godot is not supposed to come at all.
Yes.
But everybody has to wait for him.
Yes, absolutely, that is true. And in fact, as quoted, one of the San Quentin prisoners says that if Godot were to come, then Godot would be a disappointment.
Yes.
So the process itself, the waiting is very, very significant, and the play needs to be actually looked at from this point of view, from the position of waiting and the process.
So friends, the way Professor Payal Nagpal has interpreted this play, this famous one called Waiting for Godot, this shows, a kind of weird situation in which people wait and they start believing in waiting. Then in the final resolution. So things are not supposed to be resolved, things have to continue, and continuation is only of waiting. So this is the kind of message that the play, which is called the Theatre of the Absurd, that play has become more relevant to the 20th century when it was composed and when it was presented to different audiences. So I think the whole problem of the world, wearing around something that will not finally appear is the predicament, is the situation that all of us have to face. So I think with this kind of interpretation of the play that Professor Payal Nagpal has presented for our benefit, I think this question is to be mulled over, this should be thought about, we should gain clarity about it, and the clarity is that finally waiting is the answer, there is no other answer. Thank you.